28-year-old Mary Allison sent that text from beneath a white tablecloth at Carmine's Italian restaurant in Houston. Her thumb shaking so hard she had to retype it twice. Emerald green silk dress that cost 3 paychecks. Diamond studs her grandmother left her. And a knot of dread in her stomach that kept tightening with every word Kenneth spoke. She was on a dinner date with her ex-boyfriend Kenneth. The same Kenneth who disappeared for 2 weeks with her credit card information. The same Kenneth her sister Jasmine had warned her was dangerous. Her phone stayed silent. Jasmine wasn't answering. So Mary did what she'd always done when logic failed her. She analyzed the situation. She calculated the social cost of making a scene versus the physical risk of staying. She ran the numbers in her head, like she was auditing a balance sheet at her firm. And she decided to wait it out. But someone else in that restaurant wasn't waiting. A man in a charcoal suit sitting in the corner booth. A crystal tumbler of whiskey untouched in front of him. His eyes tracking Kenneth's every movement, like a predator watching prey. Liu Gee, head of the Geum-Seong syndicate, had been watching Kenneth long before Kenneth walked into this restaurant. And when he saw Kenneth's hand clamp down on Mary's wrist hard enough to make her phone slip from her fingers, Liu Gee stopped watching. What happened next would force Mary to choose between the safety her data-driven mind demanded and the terrifying freedom of trusting a man who lived outside every rule she'd ever followed. But to understand how she ended up at that table, trapped across from a man who'd stolen more than her heart, we need to go back 3 weeks. To the phone call that started everything. 3 weeks earlier, Mary sat in her West University apartment, staring at her laptop screen displaying financial forensics software she'd been running for the past 6 hours. Her second-floor unit overlooked a quiet street lined with oak trees, and the only sound was the hum of her dual monitors and the occasional car passing by. On one screen, her personal bank account showing 4 unauthorized transactions, totaling $47,000. On the other, Kenneth's digital trail, pieced together from login timestamps, IP addresses, and merchant codes. Her phone buzzed. Jasmine. Again. Mary, you need to file a police report. Tonight. Mary's fingers hovered over the keyboard. She'd built her entire career on evidence. On following the money. On letting the data tell the story. And the data was screaming that Kenneth hadn't just broken her heart. He'd broken into her entire financial identity. But filing a report meant admitting she'd been that stupid. That she'd given her social security number to a man she'd dated for 5 months because he needed it to add her to his health insurance. That she'd believed him when he said the joint credit card was just for emergencies. That she'd ignored every red flag her analyst brain had cataloged because she was tired of being alone. When Jasmine called for the 4th time, Mary finally picked up. You are still thinking about it. Jasmine's voice carried that particular blend of frustration and fear that always made Mary's chest ache. Mary, he stole $50,000 from you. 47. Mary corrected automatically, and I am handling it. Handling it how? By running background checks and building spreadsheets. This isn't a client audit, sis. This is fraud. This is identity theft. Mary closed her eyes. Outside her window, a couple walked past holding hands, laughing about something on their phone. Normal people. People who probably hadn't spent their Friday night tracking down the exact GPS coordinates where their ex-boyfriend used their credit card to pay off gambling debts. I know what it is. Mary said quietly. Do you? Jasmine's voice softened. Because I've been watching you try to logic your way out of emotional problems since we were kids. You can't spreadsheet your way out of this one. But here is the thing about sisters. They know exactly which wounds to press when they're desperate to protect you. I talked to Mom yesterday. Jasmine continued. She says you haven't called her in 2 weeks. She is worried. I am worried. This is the 3rd guy in 2 years who... Don't. Mary's voice went cold. Don't make this about my pattern recognition skills failing me in relationships. That is not what I am saying. Isn't it? Mary pulled up another screen. Transaction number 847 from a sports betting site in Atlantic City. Because it sounds like you are saying I am bad at picking men. Which I already know. Which is why I am sitting here alone on a Friday night doing forensic accounting on my own life. Silence on the other end. Then, Kenneth called me. Mary's fingers froze on the keyboard. He what? He called me 2 days ago. He was crying. Said he made the biggest mistake of his life. Said he never meant to hurt you, and if he could just talk to you face to face, he could explain everything. The air in Mary's apartment suddenly felt too thin. He said the gambling was a disease, Jasmine continued, her voice tight, that he'd hit rock bottom and realized you were the only good thing in his life. That he is getting help. That he wants to make it right. And you believed him? Jasmine's answer came fast. I don't believe him. But Mary, if you don't file a report, if you don't face him officially through the system, he is going to keep circling back. Men like Kenneth don't stop until you force them to stop. Mary stared at her screens. Transaction 848. Transaction 849. A digital trail of destruction that somehow felt less real than the memory of Kenneth's smile across a dinner table, promising her she deserved someone who saw her intelligence as sexy instead of intimidating. What if, Mary started, then stopped. What if what? What if I just sit down with him, one time? Record the conversation. Get him to admit what he did on tape. Then I'd have everything I need for the police and for my insurance claim. Mary, no. It is strategic, Jazz. It is actually the smartest move. It is dangerous. So is letting him disappear with my identity and no consequences. Mary pulled up her calendar. One dinner, public place. You'll know where I am the whole time. I'll have my phone recording in my purse. This is a terrible idea. It is a data gathering operation. This is you trying to control something you can't control by pretending it is a work project. And there it was. The accusation wrapped in concern. The truth wrapped in fear. Mary had spent 72 hours analyzing Kenneth's fraud pattern. She'd traced every transaction, identified every stolen dollar, built a case that could put him away for 3 to 5 years. But what she hadn't done was cry. Hadn't screamed. Hadn't let herself feel the humiliation of being reduced to a mark in someone else's con. Because if she could solve it like a puzzle, maybe it wouldn't hurt like a betrayal. One dinner, Mary repeated. Carmine's on Westheimer Saturday at 7. I'll text you when I get there and when I leave. Mary, I need to do this, Jazz. I need to look him in the eye and understand how I missed it. Jasmine was quiet for a long moment. Then, fine. But I am tracking your location. And if you are not out of there by 8:30, I am calling the police. Deal. What Mary didn't know. Kenneth had no intention of apologizing. What Mary didn't know. The gambling debts weren't to a casino. They were to the Silver Lotus Triad, a rival syndicate that had been slowly cannibalizing Geum-Seong territory for the past 6 months. What Mary didn't know. When Kenneth used her name as collateral for a $200,000 loan, he'd put her on Liu Gee's radar. And Liu Gee never lost track of debts owed. Saturday, 6:47 p.m. Mary stood outside Carmine's adjusting the thin gold chain at her neck for the 3rd time. The restaurant glowed with warm light. Crystal chandeliers visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Couples laughed over wine. Families celebrated birthdays. Everything looked normal, safe. Her phone buzzed. Jasmine, I have your location. Timer starts now. You have until 8:30. Mary walked through the heavy wooden doors into air that smelled like garlic, basil, and expensive cologne. The hostess, a young woman with a sleek ponytail, smiled professionally. Reservation for Hartley, Mary said, using Kenneth's last name because he'd insisted on making the reservation. 7 o'clock, right this way. The dining room opened up before her. All white tablecloths and soft lighting. And the gentle clink of silverware against porcelain. And there at a center table, sat Kenneth. He'd lost weight. His suit, the same gray one he'd worn to her company's holiday party, hung loose on his frame. But his smile when he saw her was the same one that had convinced her to give him her phone number at a Starbucks 11 months ago. Warm, genuine. Completely fake. Mary, he stood, nearly knocking over his water glass. You came. I wasn't sure you'd come. She sat down without taking his hand. You said you wanted to talk. I do. God, I do. He sat back down, fingers drumming against the table in a rhythm that made Mary's analyst brain catalog. Nervous energy. Withdrawal symptoms or performance anxiety. You look beautiful. That dress, is it new? Kenneth. Mary's voice was even, professional. The same tone she used when a client tried to hide fraudulent expenses in their quarterly report. You have 45 minutes. Say what you need to say. His smile faltered, then reset. Right. Okay, no games, I get it. He leaned forward. Elbows on the table. I fucked up. Mary. I know I did. The money. The lies. All of it. But I need you to understand that I never meant to hurt you. You stole my identity. I borrowed your information to get through a rough patch. You opened 4 credit cards in my name. I was going to pay them off before you ever knew. You maxed them out in 3 weeks. Kenneth's jaw tightened. The mask slipped, just for a second, and Mary saw something underneath that made her fingers curl around her phone in her lap. Not shame. Calculation. I had some bad luck, he said carefully. Some investments that didn't pan out. But I've got a plan to fix this. All of it I just need. Let me guess. Mary's voice was ice. You need me to do something. He blinked, recalculated. I need you to understand that we were good together. That what we had was real. What we had was a 5-month con where you identified a woman with good credit and no family nearby to warn her off. That is not fair. Show me the receipts that say otherwise. Kenneth handshot across the table, fingers wrapping around her wrist. Not gentle. Not pleading. A grip with intent behind it. Don't, he said quietly, and all the charm drained out of his voice. Make this harder than it needs to be. The restaurant noise seemed to dim. Mary's heart hammered against her ribs. Her phone was in her left hand, but Kenneth's grip on her right wrist was tight enough to leave marks. Let go of me, she said. We're going to smile. We're going to finish this dinner. And then you are going to come with me to sign some paperwork that fixes both our problems. I am not signing anything. Yes, Kenneth's smile returned. But it was all teeth now. Nothing warm about it. You are. Because if you don't, I've got friends who are very interested in having a conversation with a data analyst who works for one of Houston's biggest firms. Friends who think you might have access to information worth a lot more than $50,000. Mary's blood went cold. You are threatening me. I am offering you a choice. Kenneth's thumb pressed into her pulse point. Help me, and this all goes away. We both walk away clean. Fight me. And his voice cut off. Not because he stopped talking. Because a hand had landed on his shoulder. A hand in a black sleeve, attached to an arm in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. Kenneth's face went white. Mary looked up. The man standing behind Kenneth was Korean, mid-30s, with features that would have been handsome if they weren't set in an expression of absolute zero. His eyes were black, unreadable, and they weren't looking at Kenneth. They were looking at Kenneth's hand on Mary's wrist. You are hurting her, the stranger said. His voice was quiet. The kind of quiet that made every instinct in Mary's body scream danger. Kenneth's hand released Mary's wrist immediately. Liu, Kenneth's voice cracked. I didn't know you'd be. This is a private conversation. Not anymore. Liu Gee's gaze finally moved to Kenneth, and Mary watched her ex-boyfriend physically shrink in his chair. You owe the Silver Lotus $200,000. You used Miss Allison's name and social security number as collateral. You told them she was your business partner and would guarantee the debt. I can explain. I am not asking for an explanation. Liu's hand remained on Kenneth's shoulder. And though he wasn't applying pressure, Kenneth looked like a man being held in place by a vice. I am telling you that you have 30 seconds to leave this restaurant. And if I ever see you near Mary Allison again, I'll collect your debt personally. The Silver Lotus don't exist anymore in Houston. I bought out their operation yesterday. Which means Kenneth. Liu leaned down slightly, voice dropping to a whisper that somehow Mary could hear perfectly. You now owe me $200,000. Kenneth stood so fast his chair fell backward. He didn't pick it up. He grabbed his coat and ran. The restaurant went back to its normal noise level slowly, like someone turning up the volume on a radio. Mary realized she was still holding her phone, still recording, still sitting in a chair while her entire understanding of the situation rearranged itself. Liu Gee released Kenneth's empty chair, straightened his cufflinks, and then, with a gesture that was somehow both courteous and commanding, he sat down in Kenneth's vacated seat. You are Mary Allison, he said. Not a question. How do you know my name? I know everyone Kenneth owes money to, and everyone he has stolen from. Liu gestured to a passing waiter without looking away from Mary. The lady will have the Chianti Classico. I'll have another Macallan 18 neat. I didn't order. You are in shock. The wine will help. Liu folded his hands on the table. You sent a text 43 minutes ago, asking your sister to call you with an emergency. She didn't respond because she is currently investigating the Geum-Seong syndicate for the Houston Chronicle. She won't answer personal calls when she is on a deadline. Mary's world tilted. You are Liu Gee. I am. You are a crime boss. I prefer import-export specialist. But yes, and you've been watching me. I've been watching Kenneth. Liu accepted his whiskey from a waiter who appeared and disappeared like smoke. You were collateral damage. But after reviewing your financial forensics work from this week, I have to say, I am impressed. You found transactions even my accountants missed. Mary's fingers tightened on her phone. Every analytical instinct she had was screaming at her to run. But underneath that, a different voice was asking a very different question. How did he get access to my laptop? What do you want? Mary asked. Liu Gee smiled. It was the first expression she'd seen cross his face that reached his eyes. I want, he said, picking up the wine glass the waiter had placed in front of Mary and holding it out to her, to offer you a job. And a way out of the mess Kenneth created. But first, he paused. I think you should call your sister, and tell her you are safe. Because in approximately 7 minutes, she is going to send a police unit to this location. And I'd prefer to finish my drink without interruption. Mary took the wine glass. Her hands had stopped shaking. Before we see how this stranger changed everything, she heard herself say, as if from a great distance, kindly hit the subscribe button and drop a comment telling us where you are watching from. Because this story is about recognizing when the wrong rescue becomes the right one. Mary's wine sat untouched between them, the deep red catching the light from the chandeliers above. Liu Gee hadn't moved since Kenneth fled. But somehow his stillness commanded more attention than Kenneth's frantic energy ever had. The surrounding tables had returned to their conversations. But Mary noticed the careful way. No one looked directly at their booth, as if they'd all decided simultaneously that whatever was happening in the center of the room was none of their business. You haven't called your sister, Liu observed, checking a watch that probably cost more than Mary's car. Mary's thumb hovered over Jasmine's contact. Every logical impulse screamed at her to dial, to get police involved, to extract herself from whatever this situation was becoming. But another part of her, the part that had spent 3 weeks building a forensic case with no one to show it to, wanted answers more than safety. How long have you been tracking Kenneth? She asked instead. 3 months. Since he walked into a private poker game in Chinatown, and tried to buy in, with a cashier's check, that had your name on it. Liu took a slow sip of his whiskey. The check bounced. The men running that game don't appreciate bounced checks. The Silver Lotus. At the time, yes, they were expanding operations. Getting aggressive. Kenneth was exactly the type of desperate fool they target. Someone with just enough credit to be useful. And just enough stupidity to think he could gamble his way out of debt. Mary's analytical brain started cataloging the timeline. 3 months ago was August. She'd still been dating Kenneth. They'd been talking about taking a trip to Napa for her birthday. He'd kissed her goodbye every morning. Texted her throughout the day. Made dinner reservations at places he claimed to afford, all while using her identity to fund a gambling addiction she'd never seen. You let him keep doing it, she said quietly. For 3 months. You knew he was stealing from me and you let him. I let him dig his hole deeper. Yes. Because men like Kenneth don't stop until they hit bottom. And I needed him to be desperate enough to lead me to the Silver Lotus's financial operation. Liu's expression didn't change. But something in his voice sharpened. What I didn't anticipate was him putting you in physical danger. That wasn't part of the calculation. I am not a chess piece in whatever game you are playing with rival gangs. No, Liu agreed. You are a civilian who got caught in crossfire, which is why I am here. To remove you from the board before you get hurt. Mary laughed. It came out bitter and too loud. Remove me from the board. That is what you call this. Intimidating my ex-boyfriend and buying me wine. I didn't order. Is. Baskin don't 2018. I call it a courtesy. Liu set down his glass with a soft click. Kenneth owes me $200,000. Standard collection procedure would involve visiting everyone he knows. Freezing every asset he can access. and making it very clear that helping him means inheriting his debt. That includes you, Miss Allison. You co-signed the credit cards. Even if you didn't know it. In the eyes of the financial institutions he defrauded, you are liable. The wine glass was suddenly cold in Mary's hand. You are saying I owe you money. I am saying Kenneth's creditors will come after you next. The loan companies. The credit card companies. And the people who loaned him money when the banks said no. Liu leaned back, and the movement was so controlled it looked choreographed. Unless someone with more leverage explains that you are untouchable. Someone like you. Exactly like me. Mary's phone buzzed. Jasmine. 25 minutes. You good? She typed back. Still here. It is complicated. 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. Then appeared again. Finally, you have 15 more minutes before I call it in. Your sister is persistent, Liu said. And Mary realized he was reading her screen from across the table. Not even pretending he wasn't. Stop that. Stop protecting you. That is going to be difficult. Considering I've already started. He gestured to someone Mary couldn't see. And suddenly a waiter appeared with 2 plates. Handmade pasta in a sauce that smelled like heaven. You should eat. You haven't had anything since the protein bar at lunch. Mary's stomach dropped. How could you possibly? Your calendar syncs with your email. Your email security is embarrassingly weak. And Kenneth gave my people access to your laptop 3 weeks ago. When he needed to verify your employment for a loan application. Liu picked up his fork. The bucatini is excellent here, I recommend it. This was insane, all of it. Mary was sitting across from a crime boss who'd been monitoring her digital life. Eating pasta she hadn't ordered. In a restaurant where her ex-boyfriend had just confessed to identity theft. Before being terrified into fleeing. This wasn't analysis paralysis. This was Alice falling down a rabbit hole made of spreadsheets and threats. I should leave, Mary said. But she didn't stand up. You should eat. Then I'll drive you home. We'll discuss your options on the way. I have a car. You have a 2019 Honda Civic in the parking garage with a tracker Kenneth installed under the rear bumper. 2 months ago. I had my people remove it an hour ago. Liu twirled pasta onto his fork with the practiced ease of someone who'd learned European dining etiquette in childhood. The tracker is currently on its way to Galveston. Attached to a shipping container headed for Veracruz. If Kenneth's watching, he'll think you are fleeing the country. It will buy us time. Mary stared at her plate. Her hands were shaking again, not from fear this time from rage. He put a tracker on my car. He put trackers on your car, your laptop and your phone. I removed all 3. You are welcome. You removed. Mary's voice rose and she forced it back down. You hacked my phone. I secured your phone. There is a difference. Liu met her eyes. Miss Allison. I understand you are angry. You should be. What Kenneth did to you was predatory and cruel. But anger without strategy is just noise. If you want revenge, I can help you. If you want restitution, I can help you. If you want him to simply disappear from your life and never return, I can definitely help you. But first, you need to eat something. Let me drive you home and decide if you are going to trust me long enough to hear my proposal. Why would I trust you? You are a criminal. Yes, Liu said simply. But I've never lied to you. Kenneth has. Your credit card companies will lie to you when they say you are not responsible for his debts. The police will lie to you when they say they can recover your money. I won't. I deal in facts, Miss Allison. Same as you. So here is a fact. You have approximately 6 days before Kenneth's other creditors realize he has gone underground. When they do, they'll come to your apartment, your office, your sister's house. They'll be polite at first. Then they'll get creative. I can prevent that. Or I can let it happen and see how well your spreadsheets protect you. Mary picked up her fork. The bucatini was objectively perfect. She hated that she noticed. Hated that even now. Her brain was cataloging details. The quality of Liu's suit. The way the staff moved around their table with professional deference that went beyond excellent service. The fact that he'd said my people like it was the most natural thing in the world to have people. What is the proposal? She asked between bites. Liu smiled. Eat first. Business after, it is only civilized. They ate in silence that should have been uncomfortable, but wasn't. The restaurant moved around them like water around stones. Mary's phone buzzed twice more. Jasmine, getting anxious, but she ignored it. Whatever was happening here felt suspended outside normal time. Outside normal consequences. She was making a choice. She knew that. Every minute she stayed at this table was a choice. When the plates were cleared and Liu had ordered espresso for them both without asking, he finally spoke again. I own a logistics company. Import-export. Completely legitimate. Heavily audited. Absolutely boring on paper. He added sugar to his tiny cup with surgical precision. I need someone to analyze my competitors' financial patterns. Shipping routes, cost structures, profit margins. The kind of analysis that requires both technical skill and creative thinking. You want me to spy on your competitors. I want you to do exactly what you do for your current clients, but for me, and I'll pay you 3 times your current salary. Mary laughed. This is the job offer. Corporate espionage disguised as consulting. This is protection disguised as employment. Kenneth told the Silver Lotus you were his business partner. That means they think you have access to his assets. When they realize he doesn't have any, they'll assume you are hiding them. Working for me puts you under my protection. It also gives you legitimate income to start paying down the debt he created in your name. Lee sipped his espresso. Unless you'd prefer to explain to the police why your credit score just dropped 200 points and you have 6 figures of mystery debt. That is not a choice. That is extortion. That is reality. I am just framing it in terms you can accept. Liu set down his cup. You have until Monday to decide. In the meantime, I am driving you home, because your car is compromised and calling a rideshare from this location would flag you to 3 different surveillance systems Kenneth set up. Mary's head was spinning. How is any of this my life right now? You dated a man who was desperate enough to steal your identity and stupid enough to use it as collateral with organized crime. That is how. Liu stood. And somehow the movement made every man in the restaurant look smaller. Come on. Your sister's about to call in a welfare check, and I'd prefer not to have that conversation with Houston PD tonight. The Maybach was exactly what Mary expected. Matte black. Tinted windows. Interior that smelled like leather and money. What she didn't expect was Leo opening the passenger door for her himself. No driver in sight. You drive yourself? She asked, as he slid into the driver's seat. I prefer it. Less witnesses. He pulled out of the parking garage with the smooth confidence of someone who'd never worried about traffic laws. She asked as he slid in. Your address is 2847 University Boulevard. Unit 2B. I'll have someone retrieve your Honda tomorrow and have it serviced. The tracker wasn't the only thing Kenneth installed. Mary's seatbelt suddenly felt too tight. What else? Kill switch in the ignition. He could disable your car remotely from his phone. Liu turned onto Westheimer heading east. He was preparing to control your movements. The debt was just the beginning, Miss Allison. He was building a cage. The city lights blurred past the window. Mary felt like she was watching her life from outside her own body. This morning she'd been a data analyst with a fraud problem. Now she was sitting in a luxury car with a crime boss who apparently knew more about her life than she did. Why are you helping me? She asked quietly. Liu was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice had lost some of its calculated edge. My brother was married to a woman who seemed perfect. Smart, beautiful. Came from a good family. We didn't see the signs until it was too late. She'd taken out loans in his name, maxed out credit cards, sold property he didn't know he owned. By the time he realized what was happening, he was $500,000 in debt, and she'd disappeared to Singapore. The Maybach glided through a yellow light. He killed himself 3 weeks later, left a note apologizing for being stupid enough to trust her. Mary's breath caught. I am sorry. Don't be sorry. Be smart. Liu glanced at her, and for the first time she saw something human in those black eyes. Kenneth is my brother's wife in a cheaper suit. And you are smarter than my brother was. But that won't matter if you don't accept help. Pride is expensive, Miss Allison. Sometimes it costs everything. They pulled up in front of her apartment complex. The oak trees were dark silhouettes against the streetlights. Everything looked normal. Safe. Like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Monday, Liu said. You have until Monday to decide. In the meantime, I've posted security on your building. You won't see them, but they're there. No one gets to your door without me knowing about it. Mary reached for the door handle, then stopped. The job. Is it really just financial analysis? Yes. No violence, no illegal activity. The analysis itself. Number what I do with the information. Liu's smile was sharp. That is not your concern. You'll be a legitimate consultant doing legitimate work. What my company does with your reports is our business. That is a lawyer's answer. I have excellent lawyers. Mary got out of the car. The November air was cool on her skin, grounding her back in the physical world. She turned back to find Liu watching her with an expression she couldn't read. Thank you, she said, for dinner. And for Kenneth, and for everything else. Thank me by making a smart choice. Liu replied. Then the Maybach pulled away from the curb, silent as a shark, and disappeared into Houston traffic. Mary stood on the sidewalk for a long moment, looking up at her second-floor window. The light was on. She always left a lamp on when she went out. Another safety measure. Another small attempt at control in a life that increasingly felt like it was spiraling. Beyond her grasp, her phone exploded with calls the moment she stepped into her apartment. Jasmine didn't wait for hello. Where the hell have you been? You said 8:30. It is 9:15. I was about to file a missing person report. I am fine. I am home. You are not fine. You were radio silent for 45 minutes. What happened? Did Kenneth do something? Do I need to come over? Jazz, I am already in my car. 20 minutes later, Jasmine was standing in Mary's living room. Still in her work clothes. Gray blazer. Black pants. The glasses she wore when she'd been staring at screens too long. She looked like she'd aged 5 years in the past 3 hours. Start from the beginning, Jasmine demanded. Everything. Mary told her. Most of it. The dinner with Kenneth. His confession. His threats. The way he'd grabbed her wrist. But when she got to Liu Gee's intervention, she found herself editing. Smoothing over details. Making it sound like a random businessman had seen a woman in distress and intervened out of basic human decency. Jasmine listened with the intense focus of someone trained to spot lies for a living. When Mary finished, Jasmine was quiet for a long, dangerous moment. Liu Gee, she said finally. Korean man. Mid-30s. Expensive suit. Drove a Maybach. I didn't say anything about a Maybach. You didn't have to. Jasmine pulled out her phone, swiped through photos, then held it up. Is this him? Mary looked at the screen. It was a surveillance photo, grainy and taken from a distance, but unmistakably Liu Gee. He was standing outside what looked like a warehouse, talking to 2 men in suits. The timestamp said it was from 6 months ago. Where did you get that? Mary asked. From my investigation into the Geum-Seong syndicate. Jasmine's voice had gone cold. The investigation I've been working on for 2 years. The crime family that controls half the import-export business in Houston. Mary, please tell me you didn't get in a car with Liu Gee. Mary's apartment suddenly felt smaller. He helped me. He is a criminal. He is the head of a Korean organized crime syndicate. He is responsible for at least a dozen murders that we can't prove. And probably 100. We don't even know about. Jasmine was pacing now. The way she always did when she was trying not to scream. And you got in his car. He knew things about Kenneth. Things the police wouldn't have known. He said Kenneth owes him money. Of course Kenneth owes him money. Everyone owes Liu Gee money. That is how he operates. He loans to desperate people, waits for them to default, then uses them as leverage to expand his territory. Jasmine stopped pacing, turned to face Mary directly. Did he offer you anything? Money? Protection? A job? Mary's silence was answer enough. Oh my God. Jasmine sat down hard on the couch. He offered you a job. What kind of job? Financial consulting. Analysis work for his logistics company. His logistics company is a front for smuggling operations. Mary, you can't work for him. You absolutely cannot work for him. He said I am in danger from Kenneth's creditors. That they'll come after me for the debt. Then we'll go to the police. We'll file a fraud report. We'll get you protection. The police can't protect me from people who don't follow laws. Mary heard herself saying it, and realized she believed it. Somewhere between the restaurant and her apartment, she'd accepted Liu's version of reality as more accurate than the one she'd been living in. He removed trackers Kenneth put on my car. Jazz, my car. Kenneth was preparing to be able to disable it remotely. Jasmine's face went pale. When? Liu said 2 months ago. And you believe him? Why would he lie? He gains nothing from making Kenneth sound worse than he is. Mary rubbed her temples. A headache was forming behind her eyes, the kind she got when she'd been processing too much information too fast. I think Liu is telling me the truth. I think Kenneth was planning something worse than identity theft. Then that is more reason to involve the police, not to take a job with a crime boss. The police will tell me to file a report and wait. Liu Gee offered me protection now, and a way to pay off the debt Kenneth created. Mary met her sister's eyes. I have 3 weeks before my credit cards start defaulting. 3 weeks before everything I've built gets destroyed because I trusted the wrong person. I don't have time for the police to investigate. So your solution is to work for someone who kills people. Jasmine's voice cracked. Mary, listen to yourself. This is insane. My entire life is insane right now. At least Liu's offering me a way through it. He is not offering you a way through it. He is recruiting you. This is what he does. He finds people in crisis and pulls them into his world by making it seem like salvation. Jasmine grabbed Mary's hands. I have been investigating this man for 2 years. I have talked to his victims. I have seen what happens to people who get involved with the Geum-Seong syndicate. It doesn't end well, Mary. It never ends well. Then what do I do? Mary's voice broke. Tell me what I am supposed to do, Jazz. Because I am out of options and I am so tired of being afraid. Jasmine pulled her into a hug. They stayed like that for a long time. Mary's face pressed into her sister's shoulder. Both of them holding on like they were 12 and 7 again, and their father had just died and nothing made sense. I'll help you, Jasmine said finally. We'll figure this out. But promise me you won't take Liu's job. Promise me you'll give me time to find another way. Mary wanted to promise. She really did, but when she opened her mouth, what came out was, I'll think about it. Jasmine pulled back, hurt flashing across her face. Then she stood, collected her bag, and walked to the door. I love you. You know that, right? Everything I am saying is because I love you. I know. Then please don't do this. After Jasmine left, Mary sat on her couch in the dark, her laptop open in front of her. She pulled up the financial forensics software she'd been running for weeks, transaction logs, credit reports, bank statements, the digital paper trail of Kenneth's betrayal, laid out in neat columns and charts. Then she opened a new browser window and typed, Geum-Seong Syndicate Houston. The results were extensive. News articles about suspected money laundering. Opinion pieces about the growth of organized crime in Texas. A few pieces from Jasmine's paper, carefully worded to avoid libel but heavy with implication. And photos of Liu Gee. Always in the background, always perfectly dressed, always untouchable. Mary's phone buzzed. Unknown number. The text was brief. The offer stands until Monday 9 a.m. After that, I withdraw my protection, and you handle Kenneth's creditors yourself. Choose wisely. LG. She stared at the message for a long time. Then she opened her email, and began drafting her resignation letter to her current firm. By Sunday night, Mary had made her decision. Monday morning at 8:47 a.m., she stood outside a gleaming high-rise in downtown Houston, looking up at the letters carved into the stone above the entrance. Geum-Seong International Logistics. The building was beautiful. All glass and steel and money. The kind of place that screamed legitimate business. The kind of place where presidents of companies had corner offices and executive assistants and absolutely nothing to do with organized crime. Mary knew better now. She'd learned to look past surfaces. She walked through the revolving doors into a lobby that could have belonged to any Fortune 500 company. Marble floors. Abstract art on the walls. A security desk where 2 men in suits checked IDs and directed visitors. Mary Allison, she told the guard. I have an appointment with Mr. Liu. The guard checked his computer, nodded, and handed her a visitor's badge. Penthouse floor. Elevators on your right. The elevator was mirror-paneled. Mary watched her reflection as she rose through 40 floors. She'd worn her best suit navy blue professional armor, her grandmother's diamond studs, minimal makeup. She looked like someone who'd made a calculated business decision. She looked like a liar. The elevator opened directly into a reception area that overlooked the entire city. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Furniture that was probably worth more than her car. And behind a desk made of what looked like a single piece of black marble. A young woman with perfect posture. And a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Miss Allison. Mr. Liu is expecting you. Please. Follow me. Liu's office was at the far end of the floor, behind double doors made of dark wood and frosted glass. The receptionist knocked twice, then opened the door and stepped aside. Liu stood behind a desk that matched the reception, looking out at the Houston skyline. He turned when Mary entered, and his expression was unreadable. You came, he said. I came, and Mary set her bag down on one of the leather chairs facing his desk. She'd rehearsed this speech a dozen times, had practiced keeping her voice steady, her arguments logical, her position clear. What came out was much simpler. I'll take the job, but I have conditions. Liu's smile was sharp and satisfied. I'd be disappointed if you didn't. Sit down, Miss Allison. Let's discuss the terms of your employment. As Mary sat down across from a crime boss to negotiate her salvation, she thought about what Jasmine had said. About how Liu recruited people by making them think they were choosing their own rescue. And she wondered if knowing that made her smarter than his other victims. Or just another one with her eyes open. The city spread out below them, indifferent and glittering. Somewhere down there, Kenneth was running from debts he'd never be able to pay. Somewhere down there, Jasmine was building a case against the man Mary was about to work for. And somewhere in this building, Mary Allison was making the first decision that was entirely her own in months. Even if it was the wrong one. Liu slid a contract across his desk. Standard consulting agreement, 3 times your current salary, 6-month probationary period. After that, we renegotiate based on performance. Mary picked up the contract. It looked legitimate. Legal letterhead. Dense paragraphs of terms and conditions. The kind of document her firm would have approved without a second thought. She signed it without reading it all the way through. Because in the end, that is what it came down to. Trust was always a leap. The only question was whether you jumped toward something or away from it. Mary was done running away. 3 weeks into her employment at Geum-Seong International, Mary had analyzed shipping manifests for 7 of Liu's competitors, identified cost inefficiencies in 3 supply chains, and successfully avoided being alone with her boss outside of professional settings. She arrived at 8 a.m., worked through lunch at her desk, and left at 6 p.m. sharp. She was polite, professional, careful. She was also lying to herself about why her heart rate spiked every time Liu walked past her office. The text came on a Thursday evening as Mary was packing up her laptop. My penthouse. 8 p.m. I am cooking. Come hungry. LG. Mary stared at the message for a full minute before typing back. Is this work-related? The response was immediate. Does it need to be? She should have said no. Should have maintained the boundaries she'd carefully constructed. Should have remembered that this was her boss, a criminal, and someone her sister was actively investigating. Instead, she went home, changed out of her work suit into dark jeans, and a silk blouse that she told herself wasn't chosen specifically for this, and arrived at Liu's building at 8:03 p.m. The penthouse occupied the entire top floor. The elevator opened directly into a space that somehow managed to be both luxurious and lived in. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Houston's skyline, but also bookshelves filled with actual books. Worn spines suggesting they'd been read. Expensive furniture. But a blanket draped over the sofa, like someone actually used it. And from somewhere deeper in the apartment, the smell of garlic, ginger, and sesame oil. Liu appeared from what must have been the kitchen, wearing black slacks and a white button-down with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. No jacket, no tie. Mary had never seen him this casual. It felt intimate in a way that made her want to leave immediately. You came, he said. And there was something in his voice that suggested he hadn't been certain she would. You are my boss. It felt like an order. It was an invitation. There is a difference. Liu gestured toward the kitchen. Come on. The Galbi J Gym needs to rest anyway. The kitchen was professional grade and surprisingly cluttered with cooking. Multiple pots on the stove. Vegetables in various states of preparation. A rice cooker humming in the corner. Liu moved through the space with the same controlled precision he brought to everything else. But here it felt different. Less calculated. More genuine. You cook. Mary observed, accepting the glass of wine he handed her. My mother insisted all her children learn. She said a man who couldn't feed himself was useless. He checked something in a clay pot, adjusted the heat. She died when I was 16. Cooking reminds me of her. Keeps the memory sharp. Mary leaned against the counter, watching him work. You said you inherited this life to save your brother. But he is already gone. Liu's hands stilled over the cutting board. He is. So why are you still doing it? Because walking away from the Geum-Seong syndicate isn't like quitting a job, Miss Allison. It is a blood contract. The only way out is death or complete destruction of the organization. He resumed chopping. The knife moving with practiced rhythm. And I am not quite ready to die yet. Could you destroy it? If you wanted to. Probably. But that would create a power vacuum. Something worse would move in to fill the space. Liu looked at her directly. I've made peace with what I am. The question is whether you can. Mary took a long sip of wine instead of answering. The truth was she'd been asking herself that question for 3 weeks. Every morning when she walked into that building. Every time she analyzed data she knew would be used for purposes she'd rather not examine too closely. Every night when she went home alone and wondered what it meant that she was disappointed. Tell me about your brother, she said. Instead, not how he died. Who he was. Liu's expression softened in a way Mary had never seen before. Ji-hoon was 4 years older than me. He was supposed to take over the family business. Our father groomed him for it from childhood. But Ji-hoon wanted to be a doctor. He used to practice sutures on fruit in our kitchen. Drove our mother crazy getting blood orange juice everywhere. A small smile? When our father died, Ji-hoon inherited everything. He tried to legitimize it. Tried to extract the family from the criminal aspects. That is when his wife saw an opportunity. She knew he was vulnerable. She knew he was desperate to believe in redemption. Same way Kenneth knew you were tired of being alone. Liu plated food with the care of someone who'd done it 1,000 times. The difference is Ji-hoon didn't have anyone to pull him out. By the time I realized what was happening, he was too far gone. The debts, the shame, the betrayal. He couldn't see a way forward. So you took over. I had no choice. The family needed leadership or we'd be absorbed by rivals within a month. I was 23. I'd been studying finance at UT Austin. I wanted to work in venture capital. Maybe start my own firm. He set a plate in front of her. Instead, I learned how to run an empire built on things I'd spent my childhood pretending didn't exist. The galbi gym was perfect. Tender beef in a sauce that was sweet and savory and complex. Mary ate in silence, processing this new information, recalculating her understanding of the man across from her. Why are you telling me this? She asked finally. Because you are trying to decide if I am a monster. I want you to know. I am just a man who inherited someone else's war. Liu leaned back in his chair. And because for 3 weeks you've been treating me like a bomb that might explode. If you get too close. It is exhausting to watch. You are dangerous. Yes, but not to you. You can't promise that. I can't promise you'll never be in danger because of me. But I can promise I'll destroy anyone who threatens you. There is a difference. Liu stood. Began clearing plates. You think I am a monster who cooks Korean food and reads Murakami. I think you are a genius who has been told her whole life that being smart makes her difficult. We're both right, and both wrong. Mary followed him to the kitchen, wineglass in hand, feeling like she was standing at the edge of something she couldn't name. This is a bad idea. Probably. My sister would never forgive me. She might surprise you. I could lose everything. You already lost everything when Kenneth stole your identity. Now, you are rebuilding. Liu turned to face her, and suddenly the kitchen felt very small. The question isn't whether this is safe. Nothing about your life is safe anymore. The question is whether you are brave enough to want something just because you want it. Mary set down her wineglass. Every logical impulse in her brain was screaming warnings. Every data point suggested this was a mistake. But for once, Mary didn't want to analyze. She wanted to feel. She kissed him. Liu's hands came up to frame her face with surprising gentleness for someone who'd spent the evening casually discussing violence. He kissed her back like he'd been thinking about it for weeks. Like he'd been waiting for her to decide. When they finally broke apart, Mary's heart was racing. This is still a bad idea. Noted, Liu said, and kissed her again. They moved to the couch, then eventually to his bedroom, shedding clothes and pretense in equal measure. In the dim light filtering through floor-to-ceiling windows, Mary saw what Liu had meant about scars. They traced across his chest, his shoulders, his back. Some looked surgical. Others looked violent. A history written in damaged skin. From the inheritance, he said quietly, catching her looking. The first year was difficult. People needed to be convinced I was capable of leading. Mary traced a particularly vicious scar along his ribs. How many people tried to kill you? Enough that I learned to be very good at not dying. He caught her hand, brought it to his lips. No more talking about death, not tonight. So they didn't. They talked about other things. Mary's childhood in Third Ward, raised by a single mother after her father died. Liu's time in Seoul, visiting family who'd stayed behind when his parents immigrated. The books they'd both read. The city spread out below them. The space between dangerous and desired. Sometime after midnight, lying tangled in sheets that probably cost more than Mary's monthly rent. Liu said quietly, I need you to know something. If you're about to tell me this was a mistake. This is the first real thing I've done in 8 years. Everything else is performance, strategy, calculation. But this, he pulled her closer. This is just because I wanted to. Mary didn't know what to say to that. So she kissed him again. And they fell asleep watching Houston's lights slowly dim toward dawn. She woke up to her phone buzzing violently on the nightstand. 6:47 a.m. Jasmine calling. Mary extracted herself from Liu's bed as quietly as possible and answered in the hallway. Jazz. It is not even 7. Where are you? Jasmine's voice was tight with barely controlled panic. Home. Why? Don't lie to me. I have your location. You are at Liu's building. Mary's blood went cold. You are tracking my phone. After you started working for a crime boss. Yes. Jesus, Mary. Tell me you are not. Tell me you didn't. Jasmine's voice broke. I am coming to get you. Don't leave the building. Jazz, I am fine. You are not fine. You are sleeping with the subject of my investigation. Do you know what this means? Do you understand what you've done? I am an adult making my own choices. You are a civilian getting involved with someone who murders people for a living. Jasmine was clearly driving, the sound of traffic in the background. I am 2 blocks away. Meet me outside. The line went dead. Mary stood in Liu's hallway, wearing one of his shirts and her underwear, holding a phone that her sister had been using to track her movements. The intimacy of the night before suddenly felt very fragile. She knows, Liu said from the bedroom doorway. He'd pulled on pants but nothing else. And in the early morning light his scars were even more visible. She has been tracking my phone. I know. I've known since the day you started working here. At Mary's expression, he added. I don't monitor your personal communications. But I monitor who is monitoring you. Your sister's been running surveillance on you for 3 weeks. Why didn't you tell me? Because you needed to make your own choice about me. If you knew she was watching, you'd have been performing for her instead of deciding for yourself. Liu moved closer. But now you need to decide something else. What are you going to tell her? Mary looked at her phone. Jasmine would be here in minutes. Demanding answers. Demanding Mary choose between her sister and whatever this thing with Liu was becoming. The truth, Mary said finally. That I am exactly where I want to be. Li's expression was impossible to read. That will cost you. I know, she might never forgive you. I know that too. He kissed her forehead. Get dressed? I'll make coffee. You are going to need it. Mary met Jasmine on the street outside Liu's building. Her sister looked like she hadn't slept. Hair pulled back in a messy bun. Eyes red from crying or rage or both. Get in the car, Jasmine said. Not a request. Number Mary. I am not asking. Neither am I. Mary crossed her arms. You want to have this conversation. We're having it here. Jasmine's jaw tightened. Then she pulled out her phone, swiped through photos, and held it up. The image showed Liu in a warehouse, fist connecting with another man's face. Blood visible, rage visible. Violence captured in high-definition clarity. "This is who you are sleeping with," Jasmine said. "This is what he does when people cross him. This photo was taken 6 days ago. While you were analyzing his spreadsheets, he was beating people half to death." Mary looked at the photo, really looked at it. The man Liu was hitting had a gun in his hand. There was another man on the ground behind them. Context mattered. "What did that man do?" Mary asked quietly. "Doesn't matter. Violence is violence. Context always matters. You are a journalist. You know that." Mary handed the phone back. "What did he do, Jazz?" Jasmine's expression flickered. "He tried to move fentanyl through Liu's shipping routes without permission. Got 3 kids killed in a bad batch. Then maybe he deserved it. You don't get to decide that. The law gets to decide that. The law would have let him walk on a technicality, and he'd be back on the streets in a week, killing more kids." Mary's voice was steel. "I am not saying Liu's methods are right. But I am also not saying they're wrong. The world isn't that simple. When did you become someone who defends murder?" "When I realized that sometimes the people who are supposed to protect us won't." Mary met her sister's eyes. "You've been building a case against Liu for 2 years. In that time, how many actual victims have you found? How many innocent people has he hurt?" Jasmine's silence was telling. "That is what I thought," Mary continued. "He is violent. He is dangerous. He operates outside the law. But he also has rules. Lines he doesn't cross. Can you say the same about the police? About the legal system that would have let Kenneth walk away from identity theft with a fine and probation? This isn't about Kenneth. This is exactly about Kenneth. It is about systems that fail people and then judge them for finding protection elsewhere." Mary's voice softened. "I love you. You know I do. But you don't get to decide how I survive this. I am trying to protect you. By tracking my phone without my permission. By demanding I spy on someone who has done nothing but help me." Mary shook her head. "That is not protection, Jazz. That is control." Jasmine looked like she'd been slapped. "I can't watch you do this. I can't watch you throw your life away for a criminal." "Then don't watch." Stared at each other across a widening distance that felt like it might never close again. Finally, Jasmine got back in her car. "When this falls apart," she said through the window, "don't call me to fix it." She drove away. Mary stood on the sidewalk for a long time after, wondering if she'd just traded her sister for a man she'd known less than a month. Wondering if that made her brave or stupid. Her phone buzzed. "Liu, coffee's ready when you are." Mary looked up at the building behind her. 40 floors of glass and steel and choices that couldn't be unmade. She went back inside. For 2 weeks. Things were perfect. Mary worked during the day, analyzing data and building reports. At night, she went to Liu's penthouse. They cooked together, talked about everything and nothing. Fell into bed and into something that felt dangerously close to love. Jasmine didn't call. Mary told herself that was fine. That some distances took time to cross. She should have known it wouldn't last. The parking garage was dim and empty when Mary left work on a Tuesday evening. She'd stayed late finishing a report, and Liu had a meeting that would run until midnight. She'd planned to go home, take a bath, maybe call Jasmine to test if enough time had passed. She never made it to her car. The hand came from behind, clamping over her mouth before she could scream. Kenneth's voice in her ear, slurred and desperate and reeking of whatever he'd been using to stay awake. "Sorry, baby, but you are worth more than you know." Then a pinprick in her neck, and the garage tilted sideways into darkness. Mary woke up with her hands zip-tied behind her back, sitting on a cold concrete floor in what looked like a shipping container. The door was partially open, revealing the port of Houston at night, cranes silhouetted against orange sodium lights. The smell of salt water and oil. Kenneth paced in front of her, talking to someone on the phone in rapid panicked sentences. "Yeah, I have her. Yes, she is alive. You'll get your meeting with Liu Gee. Just wire the money first." "What do you mean you need proof?" He ended the call crouched in front of Mary. His face was gaunt, eyes dilated. The man she dated was completely gone. You had to make this difficult, he said. You could have just signed the papers at dinner. Could have helped me quietly, but no. You had to get Liu Gee involved. Do you know what he did to my cousin? My cousin who introduced me to the Silver Lotus. Kenneth. He broke both his legs and left him in Memorial Park as a warning. My cousin can barely walk now because of you. Because you got involved with that psychopath. Psychopath. Kenneth grabbed her face, fingers digging in. But now you are going to fix it. The Silver Lotus wants a meeting with Liu. You are the bait. He shows up. They get their revenge. I get my debt forgiveness. Everyone wins. They'll kill him. That is the point. Kenneth stood, resumed pacing. You think he cares about you. He is using you to get to me, to get to everyone I know. That is what he does. He finds the weakest link and pulls until everything unravels. You made yourself the weakest link when you stole my identity and involved me in your gambling debts. Kenneth hit her. Not hard enough to knock her out, but hard enough to split her lip. Shut up, just shut up and wait. Hours passed. Kenneth made more calls, paced more, got increasingly agitated as the people he'd sold Mary to kept demanding more proof. More assurances. More time. Mary used the time to think, to analyze, to plan. The shipping container they were in was in Terminal 12, based on the markings visible through the door. The zip ties were tight, but Kenneth had put them on wrong parallel instead of crossed. If she could find something sharp, she could cut through, and Kenneth was high, which meant he was unpredictable, but also impaired. She just needed an opening. It came at 2 a.m. when Kenneth's phone finally rang with the call he'd been waiting for. Yeah, you are here. Okay. I'll bring her out. What? No. I can't just let you come in here. There is a process. The phone went dead. Kenneth stared at it, confused. Then they both heard it. Footsteps, multiple people, moving with purpose through the container yard. Kenneth's face went white. That is not the Silver Lotus. He was right. It wasn't. The door to the shipping container exploded inward, and Liu Gee stepped through the opening, like an avenging angel dressed in black. Behind him, 6 men in identical suits, all armed, all moving with military precision. Kenneth raised his gun with shaking hands. Stay back. I'll shoot her. I swear to God, Liu's gun was out and fired before Kenneth finished the sentence. Kenneth went down screaming, the gun skittering across the floor. Non-fatal, intentional. Then Liu was at Mary's side, cutting through the zip ties with a knife that appeared from nowhere. Are you hurt? I am okay, but Liu, this is a trap, the Silver Lotus. I know. Liu helped her stand. That is why we're leaving now. They made it 10 steps before the real ambush revealed itself. Men poured out from behind containers. At least 20 of them, all armed. Liu's security team formed a protective circle. But they were outnumbered 4-1, and at the center of the advancing group was a man in an expensive suit who smiled like death. Liu Gee, the man said in Korean accented English. The debt collector who thinks he owns Houston. Did you really believe I'd let you absorb my operation without consequence? I didn't absorb it. I eliminated it. There is a difference. Liu didn't lower his gun, but Mary felt him calculating odds. Exits. Possibilities. Let the woman go. She is not part of this. She is part of this the moment you decided to care about her. That makes her leverage. The man gestured, and 2 of his people moved forward. Here is what happens. You surrender. Your men stand down, and maybe. I let her live. Liu's jaw tightened. Mary felt him about to do something stupid. Something heroic and suicidal, so she did something smarter. The shipping container crane alarm was 30 feet away. A bright red button on a control panel. Mary had noticed it when they'd walked out. She'd cataloged it the way she cataloged everything. Information was weapons if you knew how to use it. She broke from Luce's grip and ran. Gunfire erupted behind her. She hit the alarm button and dropped flat as the crane's emergency system engaged with a sound like the world ending. Lights flooded the terminal. Sirens screamed. The entire port security system activated at once. In the chaos, Liu's people moved, trained. Precise. Taking advantage of the distraction to gain ground. Mary crawled behind a forklift and watched the firefight unfold with a clinical detachment of shock. It was over in less than 3 minutes. The Silver Lotus men were down or fleeing. Liu's security had controlled the situation with ruthless efficiency. But Liu was on the ground. Mary ran to him without thinking. Blood spreading from his shoulder. Dark, and too much of it. He'd stepped in front of her at some point during the gunfire, taken a bullet that had been aimed at her head. "I am fine," he said through gritted teeth. "It is through and through. I've had worse." "You were shot." Mary, Liu, caught her face with his uninjured hand. "I am fine, but we need to leave before port security responds to that alarm." "Can you walk?" She nodded, numb. They were helped into a car, a different Maybach. This one with bulletproof glass and a driver who didn't flinch at the blood. The drive was a blur. Liu made phone calls in rapid Korean, giving orders, cleaning up messes. His shoulder was wrapped in someone's jacket, the bleeding slowing but not stopping. They ended up at a private clinic in River Oaks, the kind of place that didn't ask questions and didn't report gunshot wounds. A doctor who looked like she'd seen this before patched Liu up with professional efficiency, while Mary sat in the waiting room. Shaking Kenneth was alive. Liu's people had called it in to the police anonymously. Kenneth would face charges for kidnapping, assault, and probably a dozen other things they could tie him to. He'd never touch Mary again. The Silver Lotus remnants had scattered. Some arrested in the firefight, others disappeared back into whatever holes criminals climbed into when their organizations collapsed. The danger was over. So why did Mary feel like she was falling apart? "He'll be fine," the doctor said, appearing in the waiting room. "The bullet missed everything important. He'll be sore for a few weeks, but no permanent damage. You can see him now." Liu was sitting on an exam table, his shoulder properly bandaged, looking tired but alive. When Mary walked in, something in his expression softened. "Come here," he said quietly. She went. Let him pull her close with his good arm, buried her face in his chest and finally let herself cry. "You saved my life," Liu said into her hair. "That crane alarm. That was brilliant. You took a bullet for me. Yes, you could have died, but I didn't. Because you are smart and brave and you thought faster than a man with 20 years of training." He pulled back enough to look at her. "Mary, I need to tell you something." Here it comes, she thought. The part where he tells me this was too much. That I am not cut out for his world. That I should go back to my normal life. "Kenneth is in custody," Liu continued. "The debt he created in your name is gone. I paid it off and had it removed from your credit. The identity theft charges will go through official channels. You'll get justice. Legal justice. And the Silver Lotus won't be a problem anymore. You are free." Mary's heart stuttered. "Free. Free. You can walk away from all of this. From me. From the job. From everything. I'll make sure you are protected while you rebuild. New identity if you want it. Relocation assistance. Whatever you need to have your life back." Liu's voice was carefully neutral. "You don't owe me anything. Mary, you never did." She stared at him. At this man who'd inserted himself into her crisis. Offered her protection. Given her a way forward. Who'd just taken a bullet for her and was now offering to let her walk away without consequences. "What if I don't want to walk away?" she asked quietly. "Then you should examine why. Make sure it is not trauma bonding or gratitude. What if I want to stay because I've spent 3 weeks working for you and another 2 weeks falling in love with you, and tonight, when I thought you might die, I realized I don't want to go back to my life before." Mary's voice was steady. "What if I want this? The job, the complications, you. What then?" Liu was silent for a long moment. "Then you need to understand what you are choosing. My world isn't going to get safer. There will always be someone trying to take what we have. Always be risks. And I can't promise you normal. I don't want normal. Normal was dating Kenneth and missing every red flag. Normal was organizing my life into spreadsheets that had zero connection to reality." Mary took his hand. "I want this. I want you, and I am going in with my eyes open. Your sister will never approve. My sister doesn't get a vote. You could still have everything you had before. Safe job, safe life, safe choices. I could. Or I could have something real, even if it is dangerous." Mary leaned in, careful of his injured shoulder. "I am choosing danger. I am choosing you. and I am going to need you to accept that choice instead of trying to protect me from it. Liu's smile was slow and genuine and entirely his. You are absolutely certain. I've never been more certain of anything. Then okay, just okay. Just okay? He kissed her softly. Welcome to the dangerous side, Mary Allison. Try not to trigger any more port-wide alarms, she laughed. And it felt like breathing after being underwater too long. 2 days later, Mary walked out of Liu's building with her laptop bag over her shoulder, heading home to her apartment. But when she got there, she packed. Deliberately. Carefully. The things that mattered. The things that made a space home. Then she drove back to Liu's building, parked in the resident section, and took the elevator to the penthouse. Liu was at his desk, working even though the doctor had ordered rest. He looked up when she walked in with her bags, surprise flickering across his face. Mary, my lease is up next month anyway, she said, setting down her bags. And I figure if I am going to be consulting for Geum-Seong long-term, the commute should be shorter. Liu stood slowly, moving carefully with his injured shoulder. You are moving in. I am moving in. Unless you have objections. None. He crossed to her, pulled her close with his good arm. 0 objections. They stood there for a moment, overlooking the city that had tried to break them both. Houston spread out below, glittering and indifferent, full of other people making other choices. Some safe. Some reckless. All of them trying to find their way through. Mary had found hers. It wasn't safe. It wasn't what she'd planned. It wasn't what anyone who knew her would have predicted. But it was hers. And that made it perfect.